This collection of tragic tales recounts the final journeys of daring adventurers whose pursuit of breathtaking vistas proved fatally excessive. From the icy summits of Patagonia to the kaleidoscopic wonder of Peru's Rainbow Mountain, these haunting narratives delve into the heartbreaking circumstances that transform dream treks into nightmarish calamities. Brace yourself for a gripping exploration of humanity's obsession with conquering the unconquerable and the devastating consequences when Mother Nature's fury is underestimated. These are the 5 most disturbing deaths of hikers in South America. The sun was peeking over the icy peaks in the southern Andes on the 5th of December in 2023 when the rescue helicopter spotted them. 3 tiny, motionless figures scattered across the snowy slopes. Ignacio Lucero, 49, Sergio Berardo, 55, and Raúl Espir, 55, were expert Argentine mountaineers who had summited some of the world's most treacherous peaks. But their daring attempt to reach the top of the remote Cerro Marmolejo volcano, straddling the rugged Chilean-Argentine border, ended in tragedy just shy of the 6,108-meter, 20,030-foot summit. As the helicopter descended through the bone-chilling 80 km/h winds, a grim scene emerged on the crevasse-laden glacier below. The climbers' bodies were scattered at least 164 feet apart, frozen in place where they had tragically succumbed to the extreme conditions. Despite their remarkable mountaineering expertise full of epic conquests, the punishing weather and treacherous terrain of this rarely climbed behemoth of a mountain had proved too formidable, even for this elite team of alpinists. For Lucero, the group leader, it was a cruel twist of fate. Known affectionately as Nacho to friends and family, the 49-year-old had survived a massive heart attack in 2011 while ascending the 163-meter Manaslu Peak in Nepal's Himalayas. After battling back from a stroke and years of intensive rehab, the indomitable guide from Mendoza had notched over 60 successful expeditions across the globe, including scaling North America's 6,190-meter Denali and the 6,893-meter Ojos del Salado volcano in Chile without supplemental oxygen. Just months before their fateful Marmolejo trek, Lucero had delivered an inspirational TED Talk, recounting his remarkable recovery from his health crises and the life lessons of making the impossible possible. Despite the inherent dangers of his passions, his wife Fernanda and young son Salvi had become accustomed to Nacho's extended absences in pursuit of high-altitude adventure. On November 29th, Fernanda received a message from her husband saying the team had reached Camp 3 at 4,800 meters after an arduous 13-hour climb over treacherous crevasse fields and crumbling volcanic rock. It would be his last communication before the alpinists pushed for the summit, parting ways with 2 Chilean guides who had turned back due to deteriorating blizzard conditions. When no further updates came from Lucero's GPS locator above 5,800 meters, Chilean search teams sprang into action, braving the sub-zero winds and driving snow to scour the remote peak for the missing climbers. However, dense clouds and storms forced the initial rescue operation to be suspended after 3 days. Finally, on December 5th, a break in the weather allowed a helicopter to spot the tragic scene high on Marmolejo's flanks. Among the dead was Raúl Espir, who had recently been re-elected mayor of General San Martin. The third victim, Sergio Berardo, was considered the least experienced of the group, but had been lured by the thrill of scaling one of the world's southernmost 6,000-meter mountains, just miles from the Antarctic coast. In a heartbreaking ending, Fernanda revealed that her husband's final message was telling her and her son that he would begin his journey. This was his way of saying goodbye to her and Salvi, an acknowledgement that he was embarking on his final adventure to the heavens. The immense risks of Lucero's audacious pursuits were always lingering, but perhaps never so starkly as they were on the unforgiving slopes of Marmolejo. Why do elite mountaineers like him continue testing the limits, even after brushes with death? What drives them to take on nature's deadliest challenges when safer adventures await? And how do loved ones cope with the perpetual uncertainty of such an obsessive passion? Perhaps the answers to these questions would forever remain in the hearts of the departed thrill seekers, braving the risks of mountain climbing. The admission came in a hushed crackle over the radio. The search team relayed the message stating that they had found a body in a crevasse, Just like that, the frantic 9-day search for Harry Greaves, a 29-year-old British adventurer who vanished during a solo trek near Machu Picchu, had come to a tragic end high in the jagged peaks of the Peruvian Andes. For his father, Simon, back in the village of Bronigarth, Shropshire, the devastating news marked the end of an agonizing search, but also the heartbreaking loss of a profoundly philosophical son who lived with passion and wonder. The grieving father remembered Harry as someone who touched so many lives with his spirit and booming laugh, adding that the adventurous explorer would be missed by many. An inquest later confirmed the body found on April 20th was that of Harry Greaves, who had traveled to South America's iconic mountain region to celebrate his 29th birthday with an extended solo expedition through the dense jungle. A coroner ruled his death in the remote Andes was a tragic accident. The furniture maker had been backpacking for weeks with friends, marveling at Peru's natural splendors and indigenous cultures. But as his birthday on the 9th of April approached, Greaves told his companions he wished to spend it alone amongst the misty peaks, a period of solitary reflection before the next chapter of his life. His friends expected him to rejoin their party 2 days later, but Greaves never returned from his unique birthday journey. As the hours stretched into days with no sign of the experienced outdoorsman, a frantic search was launched across the treacherous Andean terrain by local authorities and the Lucy Blackman Trust, a British charity. Helicopters, drones, and scores of volunteers combed the jagged valleys and mountainsides, dreading with every passing sunset the possibility that Greaves had fallen victim to the unforgiving wilderness. They scoured riverbanks, caves, and cliff faces, finally zeroing in on his last known coordinates, an ancient Incan trail near the famed ruins of Machu Picchu, where he had separated from friends. It was there on the 20th that his body was discovered nearly 2 weeks after vanishing, having plunged into a deep crevasse, possibly while navigating the steep trails alone. Based on his remaining rations, authorities believe Greaves perished around the time of his 29th birthday on April 9th. For his father, Simon, the tragedy was a cruel bookend to a life defined by Harry's insatiable curiosity and love of the natural world. In the weeks before his fateful final expedition, Greaves had recorded poems and ruminations about life on his dad's computer, with titles like A Life Lived in Love and What It Is to Be a Man. The emotional audio files became a source of comfort for the grieving family, as they mourned a caring soul who packed more living into his 29 years than many experiences in a lifetime. The devastating accident that occurred with Harry in Peru's remote mountains remains a tragic reminder of the risks inherent to his wanderlust spirit. But his loved ones take solace in knowing he departed this world while immersed in the natural wonders he loved most. Amidst his demise, several questions linger. What drove Harry Greaves to seek solitude in the Peruvian Andes on his birthday? Could his fate have changed if he hadn't embarked on a solo journey? What thoughts and emotions were swirling in Harry's mind during his solitary reflection in the misty peaks? Regardless, one thing is sure, that in the jagged peaks and ancient trails of Peru, the memory of this young explorer will linger like the ethereal clouds brushing the mountaintops, a lasting reminder that a life lived purposefully, if cut short too soon, is one worth celebrating. As the search party valiantly braved the treacherous peaks of the mountain, they finally found what they were looking for. They looked at each other and, with finality, radioed in to confirm the dread of the missing person's loved ones. They reported that they had found a body at the base of the cliffs near the Ojo del Albino Glacier, and just like that, the frantic search for a missing British hiker in the unforgiving wilderness of Patagonia had come to a tragic end. As authorities rushed to the remote scene, a grim picture took shape. Recent University of Sheffield graduate David Min, just 24 years old, lying lifeless amid the boulders with unmistakable signs of severe head trauma. The adventurous Briton, taking in the breathtaking glacial scenery as part of an epic 7-month backpacking tour across South America, had plunged over 100 feet from a cliff face in southern Argentina's Tierra del Fuego region. A few days earlier, the adventurous Londoner had checked into a hostel in Ushuaia, Argentina, a city often referred to as the end of the world due to its southernmost location. Min was captivated by Patagonia's rugged and sublime beauty, a highlight in his epic 7-month backpacking tour across South America. David was scheduled to continue his journey, planning to leave for Chile on January 21st, staying at the Aonakenk hostel until his departure. The following morning, January 22nd, He left his belongings at the hostel's reception before informing fellow traveler Yuval Jacoby of his intention to go for a stroll. However, he still needs to retrieve his bag upon his return. At approximately 6 p.m. on January 24th, when the traveler failed to make his return, the hostel administration immediately sounded the alarm and informed the authorities about the incident. In response, the authorities immediately initiated a search and retrieval operation in hopes of finding the missing traveler alive. Darkness fell that first night with no sign of the missing Brit. But around 5 p.m. the following evening, a group of hikers made the heartbreaking discovery: Min's lifeless body lying face down on the rocky terrain at the base of a cliff face, miles from the nearest town. While the circumstances surrounding his fatal fall remain unclear, the evidence was undeniable. The engineering prodigy who had earned his degree from the University of Sheffield had sustained severe head trauma, having plunged over 100 feet onto the boulders below. Authorities believe he perished instantly on impact in the desolate, windswept wilderness. Police Chief Alejandro Giordano told reporters that an autopsy was taking place to discover what had happened. But it seemed clear that the hiker met his demise immediately after the fall. While the full details may never be known, his tragic final hike is a sobering reminder of the inherent dangers of venturing solo into untamed frontiers, no matter how meticulous the planning and preparation. It was a brutal end for a life brimming with potential that was extinguished in an instant. As his family began the agonizing process of repatriating his body back to Britain, many struggled with the same haunting question: what led to David Min's fatal fall from the cliff face in the remote wilderness of Patagonia? For now, Min's loved ones are left mourning a son, brother, and friend whose limitless curiosity and passion for seeing the world was fatally excessive. His tragic death is a stark reminder that even the most majestic landscapes can be mercilessly unforgiving to the unprepared. Like the pristine glacial peaks looming overhead, Min's memory will be frozen in time, his ultimate trail reaching a stunning yet cruel conclusion carved into the valleys of Patagonia. An explorer's journey was cut short far too soon. The sun had just begun to dip behind the towering peaks of the Andes Mountains when the unthinkable happened on July 7, 2022. Alan Dawson Miles, a 22-year-old British tourist on a hiking adventure with friends, slipped and fell 65 feet down a steep ravine. A joyful excursion in one of the world's most breathtaking locations instantly became every traveler's worst nightmare. Miles and his companions were exploring the stunning vistas near the ancient Incan ruins of Machu Picchu when the tragic misstep occurred. The remote mountainside trails that weave through the Andes offer spectacular panoramic views and pose serious hazards for the unprepared or unlucky hiker. The group was just taking in the incredible scenery when one of them looked over his shoulders and noticed that Alan was gone. Suddenly, Alan slipped through the edge of the cliff and hit the rugged ground with a resounding thud. The group was instantly shocked upon witnessing the tragedy unfold before their eyes, but the initial shock was turned into a frantic bid to save Alan. Evans and the other hikers frantically raised the alarm, but the remote location challenged summoning emergency assistance. By the time rescue crews were able to locate and airlift the gravely injured Miles to a hospital in Cuzco, excessive blood loss and catastrophic head injuries had left him in hypovolemic shock and clinging to life. Dr. Carlos Ramirez, the attending physician, solemnly delivered the devastating prognosis. Alan Dawson Miles suffered a severe skull fracture and sudden trauma to the head that caused irreparable damage. Despite the team's best efforts to stabilize him, the injuries proved too severe. He passed away shortly after arriving at the hospital. In a statement, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, confirmed that Miles's family had been notified of the heart-wrenching loss. The Bureau extends our deepest condolences to the family. It immediately confirms that their staff in Peru remain in close contact with local authorities as they investigate the circumstances surrounding this tragedy. For now, more questions than answers remain about the fateful hiking trip turned calamity. What caused the experienced hiker to lose his footing on the trail? Were proper safety precautions and gear employed for the inherently risky activities? And perhaps most haunting, could this devastating outcome have been prevented? The ancient Incan citadel of Machu Picchu, the bucket list destination that lures thousands of tourists to Peru yearly, now casts an air of sad irony. The iconic granite structures built to outlast the ages briefly served as a stunning final panorama for a young traveler whose life was tragically cut short by the awe-inspiring but unforgiving mountains themselves. As the local police investigation into Miles's death presses forward, the family he leaves behind is left grasping for answers amidst their all-consuming grief. While each perilous adventure holds unforeseen risks, no loved one should endure a knock on the door delivering a parent's worst fear, that a joyful journey of discovery instantly turned fatal. So we are left to wonder, is pursuing life's breathtaking vistas and exhilarating thrills worth immense risks? Where is the line between embracing the wanderlust of adventure travel and reckless overconfidence in conquering the hazards of Mother Nature? Tragic stories like that of Alan Dawson Miles, a life abruptly extinguished in one of the world's most beautiful yet deadly settings, starkly raise those somber questions. The vibrant rainbow mountain stripes attract thousands of awestruck tourists to the Peruvian Andes each year, all eager to behold one of nature's most kaleidoscopic wonders. But this past Sunday, the breathtaking 17,000-foot peak's colorful mineralized slopes became the tragic scene of a lightning strike that claimed the life of a local tour guide and left 6 French hikers injured. As a tour group followed the snaking mountain trail toward the Vinicunca's famed multi-hued crests, a suddenly turbulent afternoon storm rolled in, catching the unsuspecting travelers exposed on the high-altitude pass. A brutal lightning bolt forked from the churning dark clouds in a searing flash of blinding light and thunder. It was like an explosive fireball erupting before the guide and the tourists. One moment they were all marveling at the extraordinary scenery, and then everywhere was enveloped in a terrifying boom and acrid smoke. That's when the group realized the guide was lying motionless on the ground. The tour guide, 47-year-old Glauder Paucarmita Treveno, tragically became the latest victim killed by lightning strikes in Peru's treacherous Andean peaks this year. Despite the frantic efforts of his group to resuscitate him, the force of Mother Nature's fatal jolt proved too devastating. As for the 6 French tourists aged 22 to 40, the lightning burned and jolted their bodies with brutal force. Suffering from flash burns, concussions, and other traumatic injuries, the dazed group had to be evacuated by local emergency crews in a harrowing rescue effort along the remote mountain footpaths. Upon the rescue group's arrival, they immediately saw that the group was all in severe condition after being so close to the lightning's point of impact. Some were barely conscious. Others were screaming out in searing pain from their burns. It became clear to the first emergency responders that the biggest concern was stabilizing them and evacuating from that high altitude as quickly as possible. All were eventually rushed to clinics in the nearby city of Cusco, where doctors worked feverishly to treat the injuries. While 5 of the tourists have since been discharged, 22-year-old Gwenola LaRue remains hospitalized with a severe head injury sustained from the strike's explosive force. As this shocking tragedy continues to make international headlines, the events of that fateful day have cast an ominous shadow over the Rainbow Mountain phenomenon. What was once simply an awe-inspiring natural wonder has now become a stark reminder of the untamed power of the Andes and the potential deadliness awaiting those who underestimate it. So, where does the accountability lie? Were proper weather precautions taken before embarking on such a high-risk excursion? Should stricter safety regulations be implemented for tour companies operating in Peru's mountains? Is pursuing those perfect photographs and scenic vistas worth risking one's life? Only a full investigation into the circumstances may unearth those problematic answers, but the ghastly image of a vibrant mountain landscape one moment and a scene of charred earth, plumes of smoke, and immeasurable human suffering the next serves as a grave warning. Nature's magnificence and fury can never be taken for granted.